Hello everyone, welcome to this tutorial. I'm going to show you guys how to turn a static website like this one that is not responding to the browser size into a responsive site, and then we're going to add some divs that not only respond to the browser but they respond to media queries which detect the size of the browser and then move divs around accordingly. So we're going to create a sidebar that's going to jump from being on the side down to the bottom between the section div and the footer here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and look into my style sheet. I'm going to go ahead and open that up with Text Wrangler. And I've got it right here, and then I'm going to open up my index page as well so I can have both of those things open at the same time. So I've got these two files open. You'll see that the index page obviously relates to what's happening on the, you can kind of see what's happening on the browser, and then the style sheet, we see the effects of it, but we don't necessarily see it. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the style sheet right now. Right now, all of my divs, you can see, are basically a static number of pixels, but when we're talking about responsive design, we want to make sure that we make websites that instead of being a set number of pixels, we're going to set them to a certain percentage. So I'm going to go down to my header div, and instead of forcing the width to be 950 pixels, I'm going to go ahead and make that 90%. And what that's going to do is it's going to make that div, refresh here, it's going to be 90% of the browser, and it's actually happening. You can see that blue bar is the header, and it's working, except right now the logo isn't quite working with it, which we will fix in a second here. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the height auto, and what that's going to do is it's going to make whatever's in that div auto snap and kind of constrain to the size of the div, and it'll make sure that the next div comes up right below it instead of 150 pixels below it. So just in order to make that logo work, I'm going to make sure that the width is 90% and the height is auto, and then I'm going to go to my index page and make sure my width of my image is at 100%, and that's going to take up 100% of the div that it's in. So it's going to be 100% of the header div. And that header div is 90% of the browser size. So now didn't work. Let me go ahead and save that and then refresh. And now you can see that as I make the width larger, the wizard logo goes with it. Obviously with this high of resolution, I don't want it to just go 100% all the while, because that is a humongous logo. I want to cap it at about, I'm going to say about 1200 pixels, so that when I reach 1200 pixels, that's the maximum that it's gonna be that large. So I'm going to go back to the style sheet, and I'm going to add one more line of code in here. I'm going to say max width, and I am going to pick a specific pixel number here, and I'm going to make it 1200 pixels. So now it's going to force it to stop enlarging at 1200. Okay, so now when I refresh it, you can see it stopped. It went to 1200 and no more, and that's what I want to do. So I'm going to do that for all of my divs. I'm going to make sure that I add the width 90%, height auto, and max width of 1200 pixels, and I'm going to add that to every single div except for the navigation div. Obviously I want my navigation to not be auto. I'm going to go ahead and make that 90%. I'm going to leave the height at 50 pixels because that's not really messing with anything. And then I'm going to make the max width also 1200. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to put it down here in the section div as well. Give it a width and a max width, and then go ahead and do the same thing. Let's save it and then refresh, and now you can see that all of the divs respond to the size of the browser until I get to that point where it's 1200 pixels. So that's great. So now we're a step closer to making sure that the website is responding to the size of the browser. So that's great for a mobile device. Now, a couple things that I still want to do here is I've noticed that you can see the navigation kind of gets messed up. When it gets to this kind of point, the padding to the right of each one of those list items is forcing those list items to kind of bunch up below it. And so you can see that right here in my navigation UL, it's telling that for one thing, it's telling the whole list to be 80 pixels from the left, and you can see that right here. You can see the that's about 80 pixels. So instead of turning it into pixels, I'm gonna make this a certain percent. I'm just gonna make it, we'll say 5%, and what that's gonna do is it's gonna be 5% of the total width of the navigation. So I'm gonna refresh, and now as I make this larger and smaller, you can see that it's moving very, very slightly. Now I'm gonna go ahead and make these list items, give them a padding right of, instead of 125 pixels, I'm going to go ahead and make that, we'll just say 10%. We'll see what that does for now. Go ahead and refresh, and now you can see that that's a lot better. It still responds, it's getting wider and smaller, but it's not necessarily bunching up a whole lot. So obviously you're going to have to play with that to make sure that it fits your specific website. But since I've only got 4 buttons on mine, 4 buttons for the navigation, that's going to work for me. And another thing you might want to do during this process of turning your site into being responsive is that you might want to just kind of go through anything that has a pixel, horizontal pixel padding. Like for example, I'm putting any image that I have and I want space around it, I'm going to add this class space. And instead of being 10 pixels all the way around, I'm just going to do something like 2% and change that as well. So you may want to do that for images as well. Any other paddings that you might see that are not quite working out for you, you may want to also make those a certain percentage as opposed to a hard pixel number. So that's how to turn just a basic website from being static to being more responsive to the browser size.